Well, I'm alone again and no guests. So, show must go on, so let's get on with the show. Cue the music. Hello everyone, it's me Bigpod once again alone. Yeah, no Josh, what can we do? He is still on that secret mission we sent him on last week, so he won't be here for hopefully just this week. And then we're gonna have a good show next week. But until then, show must go on, so let's just jump into the first topic. So, you know how the whole building data centers on Earth, it's been like a thing these days, for especially for AI, and how RAM apocalypse is a thing, but well, also power can be an issue in those areas. Well, apparently there is a solution for at least some of those problems. Data centers in space. Apparently, SpaceX wants to put 1 million solar power data centers into orbit. That one will not go over too well. Let's be clear. I am of opinion that solar powered uh, space-borne data centers is actually a good idea, especially if we're gonna do planet-to-planet communication or even planet to moon communication, like multiplanetary life. Space-borne data centers might not be a stupid idea, but what I do not know is if this means in the orbit of Earth or some other orbit. That could be a huge difference. SpaceX apparently filed a request with FCC on Friday, seeking approval to put a constellation of 1 million data center satellites into orbit. While FCC is quite unlikely to approve a network this expansive, this huge, because remember, they're having trouble getting their multi-thousand, more than 10,000 satellite constellation to get approval for. So, but at least right now they get a foot in the door because they'll probably get a bit, probably 500 trial run, 500 satellites, and we're going to see what goes in future. The filing proposes establishing a network of solar-powered data centers in low Earth orbit to communicate with one another via lasers. Oh God! I was hoping like higher orbit or something similar. No, it's LEO. So they at least they did want like low latency communication. The filing is also full of highly ambitious sci-fi terms, like calling it a first step towards becoming a Kardashev 2 level civilization, one that harnesses the full power of the sun. Well, to me, Kardashev scale is kinda like it's very arbitrary, but okay, it's a sci-fi thing. I don't get it. It I like rockets, sci-fi not my thing. But let's remember that even just a fraction of those 1 million satellites, it would be an increase of how many satellites are there even in space. With now just few thousands, we're talking maybe 15,000 satellites right now in orbit. And let's remember, majority already owned by SpaceX, aka Starlink. Nearly 10,000 of them already. And even this, especially in low Earth orbit, causes a lot of space junk, especially by shedding micro debris, by potential orbital collisions, and getting million satellites into a lower orbit. So looking at about 300 to 600 kilometer orbit, there will be no space for us to get out. So, in my opinion, higher Earth orbit, we're talking geostationary or even higher. Yes, latency will suck, but honestly, what these are AI data centers. You can use these data centers for training, for any kind of, and even inference. Because another day, how long does inference take? It takes quite a while. It's not like it takes milliseconds. So 2-3 seconds of latency won't actually matter. Let's be honest. But the big problem right now is that they won't get this kind of license for frequency communication, blah, yada yada yada. But on the other hand, SpaceX argues these data centers would be cheaper and more environmentally friendly, and much better alternative to space-based data centers that form what is today's backbone of growing AI industry. Industry which, whether it for good or bad, isn't creating much in terms of actually useful things. Let's be honest. Yeah, many of us are creating stuff with AI that's actually useful, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't know how much of it is actually all that useful going forward out right now. But what do we expect? It's humans who control the process. When did humans create anything useful, like overabundance of useful things? But instead of siphoning water, power, and creating a lot of groundwater or polluting groundwater, these orbital data centers would be able to radiate heat into vacuum of space and rely exclusively on real-time solar power and limited batteries. That is, in theory, correct. But remember, in space, especially in this kind of Earth orbit, one side is hot, the other is piping hot, the other side is like near absolute zero cold. So they would need to actually, like, this data center need to be very well made. Like, whether it be this kind of data center or some other kind of data center, we need to think about how to do it. And yes, I do think it would be a good idea to have them on some other part of, like, outside of Earth, especially if we actually really want to do multi-solar system bodies and stuff like that, because it will allow us to go and, I don't know, live there, communicate, and have processing of the data not be bound to Earth or Moon or Mars, especially useful for things like spaceships and stuff like that. Well, problem also another problem that this would be solving is it would go against the backlash of many communities against data centers and how they've been growing, how they've been doing the stuff and all that. Because remember, it is using a lot of power, which means that a lot of people have been getting either some sort of power rationing, electricity rationing, or their electricity bills have gone way up, and usage of the, like, water has been also a big issue because, well, these centers need to be cooled and a lot of water is necessary. So, but on the other hand, there is another thing that a lot of people would be questioning is whether it's actually is better from pollution standpoint, as you know, rockets use fuel and a lot of it, for that matter, which, yes, they do. we're still talking hundreds of tons of fuel to get a data center up, probably, and a single one on that. And remember, the second problem, especially if they use like standard components, which probably they won't. Probably they'll like build like specialized, like satellite-borne data center hardware that will like be specifically made just for that use case. So they might probably be more expensive, but so probably lighter, but also size probably slightly better. So less, more of them can be packed on a single rocket, and at the same time more than can get up to space, and less fuel they will use. But remember, this kind of data center cannot have any kind of fixing, any kind of like person gets to the server and does the things to it to actually make it work again. So technology will need to get a lot better, because apparently I've read somewhere that basically monthly high-end GPUs die, like that, that you get like constant churn of video cards essentially, or Tesla cards, or like Nvidia's essentially, like a monthly churn of them. So that means that they will take a lot of power, and like very quickly these machines could be useless. These satellites, so they would have to be either put back onto into the ground, essentially grounded, or they would need to be kept on some sort of graveyard orbit. But yeah, but that's not gonna happen because it's like low Earth orbit. And yes, and we'll go back to the orbital problem. Yeah, if this is actually happens in low Earth orbit, this is gonna cause a huge amount of collisions. And while low Earth orbit, those are not a problem. Like long term, they're gonna clean up in few months to a few years. But if this kind of high level event happens, it's gonna be a problem. So why I say it's gonna be a problem, and why it's gonna cause a lot of collision. So the problem with satellites in orbit is that you cannot really move them laterally or up and down a lot. Like you have some fuel, you can do it, but you can do it really slow. So collision avoidance is a thing, but you cannot just do like, I don't know, like you do with a car. You just stop and wait for a satellite to pass. You have to move out of the way with whatever fuel you have left, and you probably don't have a lot of fuel left because you want to lower the weight. So what's the one thing that you can easily not have? Fuel. You're on orbit, you don't have to worry. So that kind of causes the problem of, since everything is in orbit, that if one satellite hits another, they basically go into a million parts. And now those bits will hit another satellite, and then another, and then another, then another, and the whole Earth orbit, whole Earth orbit could what be in essentially a cascading event, be covered just by bits of satellite bits instead of actual satellites within possibly few days if a catastrophic event actually happened. There's actually a specific name for it which I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah. So this is like the worst happening. But because of where low Earth orbit is, and the pull of the gravity that the Earth still exerts on the satellite in low Earth orbit, over time those bits would get pulled down to Earth again, and they would either burn up in the atmosphere or hit the ground, hopefully the ocean, which is what normally happens when you have controlled re-entry. Problem is this wouldn't be a controlled re-entry. So yes, it is a problem, but it's not such a problem. Now, on the other hand, there's such a thing as geostationary orbit, which is like thousands of kilometers away from Earth. There, if such an event, such a cascading event of destruction of satellites happened, that would cause basically that section of orbit to be unpassable, because that debris would never actually get like moved to any lower, or it would happen over thousands of years. So now think about it. If you have a satellite, one satellite, let's say honestly, above Europe, geostationary satellite stay move at the exact same speed to go like somewhat stationary above Earth, which means, let's say that this kind of catastrophic event happens over Europe. That means you cannot have a satellites, including GPS, above Europe ever again. There are efforts to clean up that kind of like old satellites or like bits and pieces, but up until now, none of those really happened. And like there is some experiments, but that's it. So what we need for to happen is to not have this kind of event, because this kind of event could cause anything from total inaccessibility for humans to outer space, to inability to place any kind of satellite, to inability to actually use technology to already use space-based satellites like GPS. So yeah, this can be scary, especially if we put a lot of things in space. But we're gonna see. So that's why I've been hope. What my opinion should happen is higher orbit. We're talking tens of thousands of kilometers. Maybe even outside of Earth's orbit. We're talking lunar orbit. We're talking solar orbit. Yes, data would take a long time to get there and back, so it will have to be all asynchronous. But like for certain things, that's okay. Remember, training, you can train for whatever amount you want. Doesn't matter if it's there, 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 or around sun. Doesn't really matter. And just as a heads up, geostationary orbit is 35,000 kilometers or 36,000 kilometers. So I was wrong by the multiple thousand kilometers. It should be multiple tens of thousands of kilometers, which means maybe like any kind of like maybe like 60,000 kilometers, 70,000 kilometers is what we should be thinking about for this kind of satellite constellation, or even many more, because then the space between satellites, even if you put many of them and you make an equidistant distance, will be there would be still a lot more spread. Bigger the orbit, more distance between satellites can there be with the same number of satellites. But I hope this at least becomes a trial, because it could be interesting from perspective of communications and spaceborne computing, for when we start once again going to moon on a permanent basis, going to Mars. It would even allow us to get next generation hardware that would be better shielded against space events like solar storms and radiation, which would all be good for again that travel among the stars we also hope for, that sci-fi reality. You could sit on a spaceship and go to Mars without really much of a thought. Let's go down from space to Earth and talk something that's much closer to all of us: gaming. So, apparently, Valve has gotten involved in a lawsuit, a 656 million pound lawsuit, which in dollars nears almost $1 billion. The lawsuit alleges that, well, the commission Steam takes, the 30%, up to 30%, is excessive. And on Monday, the so that would be previous Monday, tribunal ruled that the case could continue and go to actual court. Valve sued in 2024 on behalf of 14 million people in the UK who bought games or additional content through Steam or other platforms since 2018. Lawyers representing children's welfare advocate Vicky Shotbolt, who is bringing the case, allege Valve prevents publishers selling products more cheaply or earlier on rival platforms than Steam by opposing conditions on them. So essentially, that Steam abuses its monopoly position to kneecap other rival platforms by disallowing different prices and, well, better conditions for other platforms. They say that Valve requires you to buy all additional content through Steam if a person bought the game through Steam, effectively locking the user into making all purchases on Steam. And this allows them to charge the unfair and excessive commission of up to 30%, which, yeah, but kind of makes sense. Like, problem is that the, this would make a lot more work for other platforms and actually even Steam if you were forced to be able to combine those stores. Essentially, when I'm talking stores, I mean data stores on your computer, so that you could install an add-on from, let's say, Ubisoft Connect when you installed your game, or you bought your game and installed your game through Steam. You're now forced, let's say you buy an add-on, let's say for Anno, one of Anno games. So let's say, for example, Anno 117 packs from Anna. Let's say I buy the full game on Steam, but now I want to buy Ubisoft on Ubisoft Connect the the next big content patch. I don't know, add-on when it comes out. How do I now combine these two pieces of content? Because like Steam has checking of data and it wouldn't have that add-on data, and so that's Ubisoft, and this would require a lot of like VFSs and similar technologies, but also like it will also make our lives as Linux users harder because on Steam things just work. Valve argued that the case should not be certified to proceed to trial, but apparently UK's Competition Appeal Tribunal disagreed and ruled that case should continue to trial. While Valve didn't yet respond, the lawsuit is the latest mass case to go to the. This lawsuit is actually the latest mass case to go to get a go-ahead in Britain, including separate cases against Apple over its App Store, Google over its Play Store, both of which also do commissions up to 30%. Valve is separately facing a consumer action in United States, which was filed in Seattle in August of 2024. So, what do you guys think about this problem? Like, type in the comments. Like, my opinion is, while yes, Valve and Steam are in dominant position, the the reason for that is because they are, well, the best at what they do. And on separate separate problem with the whole commission, it isn't like the cheapest thing to do to get these games to gamers. Like, it is like infrastructure wise and bandwidth wise, it's actually a pretty expensive endeavor. So I'm not gonna say they are what is what because I don't know actual numbers. in regards to this. So again, what is your opinion? Do it in the comments or over email. So at contact@tuxbase.com, where both me and Josh will get the email hopefully next week. With Josh will be right next to me. Well, also I have me and Josh both have YouTube channels. You can find us at youtube.com/@10ninja and youtube.com/@bigpod. Also, uh, No Text Allowed has a Patreon. You can check out our Patreon and subscribe or give us patronage, which will get you a better experience listening, as you will get access to our premium feed, which contains 320 megabit per second, I believe, or kilobit per second. I don't know. Oh, kilobit per second. Yeah, it has like high bitrate content with some pre-shows and bloopers. You can also get some additional like just good guy points in your head or an internet gold star by helping us have better infrastructure that way. Oh, and we're both on Mastodon. We have our own Mastodon instance. Check us out. It's mastodon.tuxbase.com, or you can check out tuxbase.com on your personal, the ones you're using. So I would be at bigpod@tuxbase.com and Josh will be at 10lj@tuxbase.com. So check us out, give us a follow, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.